Vaishnavi, welcome. You've been on lots of times on WDI. Congratulations on a completely another fantastic film after Dysphoric a couple of years ago. This is amazing to get this out so quickly and it's just wonderful to watch it. It's so beautiful and very, very moving and politically amazing. You're making so many important points, but I think to me, when I was watching it, I was thinking that this can reach a lot of different people who are not already rabid turfs. This is going to be acceptable to ordinary people who just think, I want to know about this. Vaishnavi Sundar is a filmmaker, feminist activist, country contact for WDI India, and she's going to talk to us about Behind the Looking Glass, the latest documentary, which discusses in detail the experience of trans widows, women whose partners have or want to transition. So over to you.
In the process of 3 years that it took me to make this film, to finish this film, I have come on WDI Feminist Question Time twice before already. And then I also had the opportunity to meet some women at the London conference that we had alongside Philia last year. So during this entire 3 years of time, I was basically just either filming women or collecting information online, researching, or I'm just editing. Editing alone would have taken a large chunk of my time in the course of these 3 years. But uh, the film is now done, and I agree with you that it was a conscious effort to make it a film that isn't just about how angry we are about this whole ideology. I wanted all kinds of different people to be able to watch the film, kind of make it, lack of a better word, palatable for everyone to watch it. But even then, there were a lot of women who were saying that it was difficult for them to watch it. What I was thinking was, when they were making these comments under YouTube, they haven't even heard the actual most grotesque parts yet. So this was an effort that I was very conscious about, that I need to make sure it doesn't shock people off of our film. I wanted people to watch it from the start to finish and have like a thought to themselves about the silencing of wives and children within this ideology, where we now have an opportunity to discuss something about men and women who regret transitioning themselves. But within the scope of gender ideology, there is this vacuum about the voices of the families and the children that are left behind along the way, particularly by men, because their motivations seem to be far more insidious than the motivations for young women to opt to transition, as we all know. Now, um, I did not think in the beginning that I would have such a positive response from trans widows themselves, and I have managed to, feeling so grateful about it, that I've managed to collect stories from not just the US and the UK, which we think is the epicenter of all of this, which it is, but there are also a lot of women that are affected by it across the world. And I was fortunate enough to have their stories to be part of the film as well. Uh, the reason why it took so long is also because I was very patient in making sure to try and show it to person as a global phenomenon, rather than just it being about women in the UK and the US. Now, when I was researching and I was talking to these women, was very confident that I wouldn't get a lot of people to talk to me. First of all, and then to agree to be part of a film like this. But I was really wrong, because the women were just waiting for an opportunity to speak. And when I asked them, they talked. They just talked and talked and talked. And then at one point, it was just 40 something women whose stories I was completely stored in my head. I knew inside out about all the things that happened to them. I knew what they liked. I knew what their favorite books were and movies were and things like that. We built a sort of a beautiful relationship with all of them in a way that was good, because that is how I could conceptualize this film in my head while I was talking to these women in much, much early stages, when I hadn't even fully understood that whether a film can be made about this topic at all. There were a lot of uh, choice that women had to make about whether or not they can be public about their story. As you would have seen, some of them are very public about it, with their face and their name displayed on screen for anybody to see. Now, these are women for whom such experiences have happened when they were younger, and they have already spoken in other platforms, so they were very happy to be a public face for defending the rights of trans widows. And then there were others who, for their safety or the safety of their children, had to be anonymous. And I thought if that was the only thing that was stopping them from sharing their story, it is not fair. And considering that this is the first ever film made on this subject, I thought I should be able to make a possibility to incorporate those stories as well. Because if I was to only rely on women who are happy to speak publicly, then that would be a very small number. And it would, in my head, I was thinking the fact that these women are anonymous actually says so much about the dangers that these women would face, rather than say that, oh, they are, not brave enough to speak about it publicly. They aren't able to speak about it because of the dangers that they might face in the hands of their spouses, or they were mostly 99% of them were worried about whether the child or their children would be taken away by this abusive man. In the process of making this film, there were a lot of uh, experiences that I had. I had to look for a lot of animators because 8 stories had to be made from scratch. Now, there are only so many women who are available at any given time for a project. And a lot of these women, animators who I worked with, both in Dysphoric as well as for this film, all had day jobs and they could only give me some evenings and maybe some weekends. And in that, they had their own commitment. So I had to really wait for some time where they could finish this project for me. So I started looking for animators online to see, how these websites advertise that with their portfolio and things. I put out ads asking if women would be interested in working on a project like this. They got all kinds of different responses. Some would just blatantly say things like, "You're such a horrible person to want to make a film on this subject." Others would say, "I understand this is important, but I don't think it is right for me to be part of a project like this." Some would just not respond at all. But then one Pakistani animator, her name is Savera. She was very happy to get in touch with me. She looked at it as just a project. She was interested in the fact that I was talking about male violence against women, and that kind of connected with her. And I had privilege to work with a Pakistani animator in the process of making this film, apart from the Indian animators that I was already working with. But despite these difficulties of finding my crew members, we managed to pull together a project like this of this magnitude with so much patience on my part, I suppose, a lot of waiting on my part. In the process of waiting, I learned a lot of things to do by myself, which is my entire filmmaking career, to be honest. But it was also great for me because I started doing little animations myself because I just couldn't wait. Yeah, in the process of making this film, there was also this risk of whether I would raise enough funds to be able to pay all these women, because I was constantly advertising that I need more animators, more illustrators, more this, more that, because the film demanded something like that, because it's a full-length feature documentary. And in a real world, if it had been made by a big production house, you'd have, I don't know, 50, 60 people working on this project, 20 people just for little things, and then there would be this main animator, and then there'll be subordinates, and then this, and then here I was, just me, and then just a few women, right? It was a very, very difficult task to do it. So funding was like a very scary thing to ask for, because I wanted to make sure that the women that were working for me were truly compensated for their time and their efforts, because the last thing I want is to ask women to work for exposure or for experience or something like that. So there was that risk as well, but women came together and a lot of women donated. I don't know, it was such a happy feeling when women donate as little as $2 or $5 or something like that. And it truly sometimes brings sometimes tears in my eyes, because if somebody is willing to part with $2 or $5, then it really says something about how much she wants to support a project despite not being able to make a big donation. And I have been so moved by all these gestures by women world over. And I think I should definitely mention that as part of why I could keep going on, because it felt like this is the kind of grassroots film or a project that I want to be a part of, where women from around the world who have no idea who I am, but are able to send me $2 and $5 because they want this project to be made. And that made me truly happy. And there were also a lot of ongoing legal cases while I was in the process of making a film. That's a challenge with the project that takes so long to make, right? So in the process, there were some women who just couldn't be part of our film anymore. So I had already edited some of their parts into the film, but then now they were at such grave danger from their ex-partners, so they had to completely just remove themselves. Even anonymity wouldn't help and things like that. So I had to, till the very end, till the moment I uploaded it on YouTube and all of you watched it, it was like a constant fear that somebody might have some risk to their life, to their children's lives or whatever, and I would have to redo the whole thing. But then it's not possible because you do music composition for the whole film, you do sound design for the whole film. So if somebody were to ask their part to be removed, it would have been such a nightmare. But I did not ask women to sign any release forms or something like that, because it is not one of those things where you can say, well, I don't care if your ex husband is coming after you, you've signed this release form, so you have to be part of this project. I couldn't have said that, so I didn't sign any release form or anything of that sort. So there was this constant risk that somebody might just decide not to want to be part of this project till the very last minute. But thankfully, it all happened in the early stage, and it was still manageable. Oh, and there are a lot of aspects that I could have incorporated and bring it back home to India. But then I chose not to do that because I realized India is still quite unclear about the terminology, first of all, and there is this difficulty of unifying Indian women as one unit because we don't have a common language and not all of us understand English. And for them to know what trans widow is and for me to have access to all of them, then that would mean that I can only access people who understand English, because I don't speak any other language in India. And there was already a challenge of making this about India. But I think I can confidently say that there are women whose partners are doing this to their wives, because there is a lot of subreddits which is exclusively India centered. And there are all of these men with all of their perversions and paraphilias who constantly talk about themselves with women's lingerie, calling themselves a slut or a sissy or things like that. There are all kinds of really strange. I mean, I went down this rabbit hole and I regretted it today and even today, because it's just one of the most disturbing things I have seen in my whole life. Now, also, courts are able to grant divorces to women on the basis of the fact that the partner has opted for sex change surgery. Now, it is not because the court cares about these women. It is because they believe in the legal aspect. Hindu Marriage Act or Special Marriage Act, marriage happens between male and female. Now, when one person claims that he is no longer male, then the marriage becomes void. So the women who is affected by this, it's very hard to reach her, because Indian system is such that it is always about the perpetrator versus the state. And even if I were to find out who this woman is, the chances of her explaining her situation to me, or me explaining that this is a global phenomenon, whether she would be interested in being part of a project like this, is just so far-fetched. So perhaps an India-based film is waiting to be made, and at one point I will make it. But I think there is a lot of many hills to climb before I can make awareness about the subject in my country and in extension global south in itself. During the research process, I spoke to many women who couldn't be part of the film, one from Mexico, one from Brazil. So it is happening in the global south, and we know for a fact that women are affected by this. It is going to be probably a separate film at some point in future to talk about this in countries where we have challenges in terms of language, education, poverty, and other things. But that's the reason why I couldn't talk in detail about India. Another thing I couldn't talk in detail about in this film, and I'm sure a lot of people have asked me this before as well, is to talk about lesbian trans widows. Now, I have talked about pornography and the kind of abuse and manipulation and other things that these men put these wives through. I thought it would be unfair if I just insert the lesbian motivation behind wanting to transition as just a chapter in all of this, and how the partner who's remaining would feel about this. I thought it would be unfair because that warrants another dedicated focus on what this is, because the motivations are completely different. And I thought it would be unfair if I just insert it as one little thing. And of course, finally, once now that the film is over, we are facing shadow banning and demonetization on YouTube and things like that. You can see the film, but you will have to go through a few extra steps before you can find them. They are making it difficult for women to find it. If it is so easy that you can just look up, type behind the looking glass and watch it, then it's easier. But if you make it harder for people to watch it, then maybe 2 out of 10 people will be dissuaded from watching it, right? And that's what they want. They've kept my film, but they have shadow banned it, they have demonetized it. They've told me that the ad people would find our film unsuitable for their advertisements. But guess what advertisements are playing when our film is running? Pro gender identity ads. And I get nothing from it. So it's the same example of women's labor being exploited by men. So that's the long and short of it. The film is online for you to watch, and I've since uploaded it on X as well. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. We've had some local screenings as well in different parts of UK. There are a few coming up. A lot of people, a lot of women are just gathering together as friends, and they're watching it on TV and things like that. The film has subtitles in 8 languages. All thanks to the volunteers who've come from around the world, have just it's just like dysphoric. It's our film. It's our film. It's like a resource that's for all of us. So go ahead and download it, screen it, do whatever you want with it, but just make sure that the voices of trans widows and the children who are affected by this is somehow heard. And you can do that now because we have this film. You don't have to do the talking, just have to share it. So thank you very much.
What do you think is the best way forward in India? I'm hearing news stories on a daily basis of women being raped and murdered. For example, there was a recent incident of a female doctor in Kolkata being raped and killed after a long shift. Do you have hope that India will ever change for the better? That's the first
No,
question.
no.
No.
No, it's going to be, I have to be honest about why I hate this country so much and the men of this country so much. I genuinely hate them. There is something really, really bottom of the barrel depraved mentality that these men have. And I want to attribute a lot of this to use of pornography and easy access to smartphones that, even men in rural areas are able to do it. There is a rape. And 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to campaign to an MP in Canada against MindGeek, the company that runs pornography, Pornhub. A few of us made a presentation where we said, these are the problems Pornhub and companies like Pornhub are creating. In that, I said 4 years ago that whenever there is a gang rape happening, the first thing Indian men do is look up their names on porn websites. Now, back then, I had written to a lot of these liberal feminist mainstream media companies, asking them to commission me a gig where I can write about this, when I can explain the connection between pornography and what is going on with the rape statistic in this country. I did not get any response because I had already become a bigot by then, a Nazi by then, a fascist by then. So they were not interested in it. Now, after this Kolkata case that Vishnu is talking about, every mainstream media seems to have found this, like as if they have found this is thought of it by themselves. They are now saying that there is a strong influence between pornography and the way men behave. So it's like if they want it, if they find any benefit from it, they will go run with it. But when actually women who have been working on this for so long, just because we're talking against this trans ideology, suddenly everything else that we say also doesn't make sense or also doesn't is not important enough for them to allow us to be published with their website and things like that. I don't have hope that this country will ever be better, but I do have hope that women are tolerating less and less bullshit with the way things are right now, and more women are saying no to behaviors like this. Women are able to catch red flags sooner. Of course, unfortunately, there is a steady rise in the number of young girls wanting to transition as well for very obvious reasons. Why would a girl want to be a girl in a freaking shithole like this country, right? Why would a girl not
Yeah.
take up an opportunity, a golden opportunity? Because that's providing you with a solution today. I mean, fighting patriarchy aside, that's going to take forever, right? Today, they're telling you that you will not be raped by your family member because you're gay. You can just become a boy today and then you can be with the girl that you love. Why would she not take that? So it's a very dangerous situation, twofold dangerous situation. Women are able to identify male violence against women, but there's also a steady rise in the way young girls are choosing to just flee from womanhood, right? Because we don't have enough role models to look up to, and where it can be normalized that if I'm a woman and I love women and I love another woman, it is not that I have to become a man for me to pursue that. I can just be a woman and I can be a lesbian woman. It's just perfectly fine. But that kind of an education or that kind of thought process is not there. And the media and other departments, the stakeholders of the country have a lot of money and social capital at stake. So they're not normalizing homosexuality. Instead, they're saying all this bigotry is going on. Therefore, we need to promote transgender ideology because they benefit from it too, right?
Yeah.
So this is all you listen to everywhere, social media. Joe, for an article that's got absolutely nothing to do with trans, right? Mainstream media companies are saying cis women.
If women want to get you to come to do a screening in their country, is that a sort of thing you'd do, that you would come and talk to people? Like, because quite often there are film screenings and then afterwards people can actually talk to you and ask questions. Is that possible that I know that to raise funds to get you to come over, but is that possible?
There is definitely possible. There's already conversations with a few radical feminists who are considering that possibility. And even if they can't invite me over, Zoom is like the next best option. Even if they do a screening somewhere, I'm happy to send them on Google Drive the files and whatever subtitles they need. I'm happy to give them all of that, and they can do a screening. And the Q&A can happen online as well, because I understand we as a movement we have very little money, and there are so many things that need money, legal cases and this and that. So there's chances of me flying down to another country, it's an expensive thing, and I understand that not everybody is able to do it. But the next best thing is doing it on Zoom, and I'm very happy to do that just the same. So as long as we are able to get women together to watch it and discuss it, and then in turn go and talk about this politically elsewhere in different groups and things like that, that's the victory, right? We're not going to have red carpet for films like ours. We
Yeah.
definitely are not going to get awards and things like that, but
Have you had any mainstream support? Has anybody invited you to like bring it to the Sundance Film Festival or whatever, or give you an Oscar or stuff like that? And are you in touch with the mainstream, or are you just really completely cancelled?
well, of course, I'm completely cancelled. And if I submit a film like this, Sundance, for every film entry submission, you'd have to pay them. You'd have to pay them to submit your film.
Wow.
There is an entry fee. All of these big festivals are like that. It's not possible to just send your film like that. There are categories and there are entry fees, and they do this kind of a gatekeeping so that they don't have just so many people sending them films, right? It only makes sense because they have only limited number of resources themselves. But then you can be rest assured that all of these mainstream film festivals will not touch our film even with a barge pole, because they are the ones that are screening film like the one that Will Ferrell is on. It really just comes down to us. The mainstream media is not going to want to platform a film like this. Even the ones within our ideology where people are critical about this, the seemingly big platforms and everything, aren't going to be interested in this subject. I realize that based on my experience wanting to get in touch with them and things like that. It's because it's male violence against women, and nobody wants to listen to these women's stories and how it is affecting children unless you're choosing to be trans. Then suddenly it's the hot topic. Trans is the hot topic, not the ramifications that this ideology leave behind. And I've understood that in a very, very hard way. So it really comes down to us. It was very hard in this 3 years, to make this film and everything. But the film is out now. It's out. It's there. All we have to do is just keep sharing it and keep making people watch it somehow. So if you can create these avenues where you can just collect a few friends and make an evening out of it or something like that. I know it's not a pleasant watch, but it would still be something that we can discuss and understand. And it gives you a lot of pointers when you want to argue with somebody as well, or if you want to make a statement in a parliament, for example. It gives you a lot of points, and you can make use of that as a resource, just like you would as a PDF, for example. So I just ask women to, make this film your own, and just, share it as much as you can.